I was told to figure it out, while they paid for everything she ever wanted. Now they're calling me selfish for not giving up my life's work to fund her healing journey. Part 1. The Foundation. I bought my apartment when I was 28 years old. A small 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy. $136,000 after years of saving, sacrifice, and early mornings that blurred into late nights. When I signed those papers, my hands shook. Not from nerves, but from disbelief. Every dollar in that down payment represented a decade of my life. Every mortgage payment I'd make going forward was a promise to myself that I would never be financially vulnerable again. My parents said, "Good job," when I told them. That was it. Good job. Like I'd passed a test or remembered to take out the trash. Then they moved on to talking about my sister's latest Instagram post. That's always been the pattern. I'm 33 now, the oldest child in a family that never quite knew what to do with me. I learned early, maybe too early, that I was expected to be responsible, capable, self-sufficient. There's a photo somewhere of me at 7 years old, making my own lunch for school while my mother napped. I don't remember anyone teaching me how. I just figured it out. Boys figure it out. That was my parents' philosophy, delivered so often it became less a statement and more a prophecy. A destiny they'd written for me before I could write my own name. I started working at 16. Fast food first, grease burns on my forearms, the smell of frying oil in my clothes no matter how many times I washed them. Then retail, where I learned to smile at people who treated me like furniture. Then warehouse work while I put myself through community college, loading trucks at 4 a.m. before my 8 a.m. classes. I paid my own tuition because my parents said I should figure it out. I did. I always did. My sister was born when I was 7. The miracle baby, they called her. My parents had given up on having another child after years of trying. When she arrived, something shifted in our household. The attention didn't just divide, it migrated entirely to her crib and never came back. She had designer clothes while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins I barely knew. She had private tutoring sessions while I taught myself algebra from library books. She got a car at 16, a birthday gift, wrapped with a bow, while I took the bus until I was 22 and could finally afford my own rusted Honda. And college. My parents paid every cent of her tuition. The same parents who told me to figure it out wrote checks to her university without being asked. She studied art history, graduated with honors and 0 job prospects. But that didn't matter because she was pretty, charming, and absolutely certain that the world would continue providing for her the way our parents always had. She wasn't wrong, really. It did. I need to be clear about something. I don't hate my sister. I've tried, sometimes, when the resentment gets thick enough to choke on. But you can't hate someone for the circumstances of their birth any more than you can hate water for being wet. She didn't choose to be the favorite. She just was. What I struggle with is the pattern. The endless, exhausting pattern of a family that sees me as a resource to be extracted rather than a person to be supported. My sister is 26 years old now. She has never worked a real job. Not really. There was a brief stint as a gallery receptionist. She quit after 3 weeks because the energy was bad. She tried being an Instagram influencer for a while, posting photos of brunches and sunsets, but she never got past 2,000 followers. She attempted selling handmade jewelry, which generated maybe $200 total over 6 months. Now she's finding herself, which means living in my parents' spare room, contributing nothing, waiting for the universe to deliver whatever she believes she deserves. I calculated it once, during a particularly bitter evening. My parents spend more on my sister every month, phone bill, car insurance, shopping trips, vacations with her friends, than they spent on my entire childhood combined. And they don't even notice. To them, it's just what you do for your daughter. Your princess. They told me, boys figure it out, when I needed help with college. They paid her tuition without being asked. Now they're saying, you're a man, you'll earn more. Funny how my gender is an advantage when they want something from me and an obstacle when I needed something from them. Part 2. The Demand. My sister's boyfriend of 2 years broke up with her last month. I didn't know the details at first, just that she was devastated, crying daily, posting cryptic quotes on social media about betrayal and healing. My parents were worried. Their princess was unhappy. Something had to be done. Through the family grapevine, my aunt, specifically, who has always been more honest with me than my own parents, I learned the real reason he left. He wanted her to get a job, to contribute to their future together, to build something rather than simply consuming what others built. She refused because, according to her, working ruins your soul. He got tired of funding her lifestyle. So he left. And now she's back home, talking about needing a fresh start and her own space to heal. I knew something was coming. I could feel it building, the way you feel a storm approaching before the first drops fall. When my parents invited me to dinner last Saturday, their voices careful and strange, I knew. The meal was awkward. Loaded silences. My mother kept exchanging looks with my father across the table. My sister barely touched her food, playing the role of the fragile wounded bird to perfection. After dessert, my mother's apple pie, which I used to love but now tastes like obligation, my father cleared his throat. "Son, we need to talk about your sister." I waited. "She's going through a hard time," he continued. "She needs stability. A place of her own to rebuild her confidence." My mother leaned forward, her face arranged in that particular expression of martyred concern she reserves for my sister. "You have that apartment. You're doing well. You're a man. Men can always earn more, find more. But she's a woman. Life is harder for women. She needs security." I felt my jaw tighten. I said nothing. My sister spoke then, looking at me with those big, sad eyes she's been perfecting since childhood. "I'm not asking you to give it to me forever. Just let me live there. Maybe transfer it to my name so I feel like it's really mine, you know? I need to feel ownership over my life again. I'll pay you back someday. When I find my path." The audacity of it. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. My father nodded, as if she'd made a reasonable request. "It's the right thing to do. Help your sister. You can rent somewhere temporarily. When you're ready to buy again, you're smart, you'll figure it out." The same phrase. The exact same phrase they used when they refused to pay for my college. "You'll figure it out." Except now it meant something different. Now it meant, give up everything you figured out. Hand over the physical manifestation of a decade of your sacrifice because your sister got dumped for being unemployed. She's 26 and has never paid a bill. Never bought her own groceries. Never stressed about rent. And they call her fragile. She's not fragile, she's untested. Fragile is what happens when you've been broken and healed. She's never been broken because she's never been allowed to fall. I almost laughed. I wish I had. Instead, I sat there for a long moment, looking at each of them in turn. My father, with his righteous expression, so certain of the fairness of his request. My mother, already preparing the guilt she'd deploy if I resisted. And my sister, watching me with those practiced vulnerable eyes, already certain she'd won. I thought about the years. The 4 a.m. shifts. The meals I skipped to save money. The vacations I never took. The relationships I let wither because I was too exhausted to nurture them. I thought about every sacrifice that had gone into those apartment walls, and they wanted me to hand it over because my sister's boyfriend had finally gotten tired of her refusal to grow up. "Let me understand this," I finally said, my voice calmer than I felt. "You want me to give her my apartment, the one I saved 10 years for, because her boyfriend left her for being unemployed, and she needs to heal?" My mother's face tightened. "Don't be cruel. She's fragile right now. She's 26. She's not fragile. She's untested. There's a difference. She's never struggled because you never let her." My father's eyes narrowed. "We gave you both the same opportunities." I stared at him. "You gave me a bus pass and told me to figure it out. You gave her a car, college tuition, and an allowance that lasted until this week. Those aren't the same opportunities. Those are different planets." My sister started crying then, the performative tears I've seen 100 times. "They always work on our parents." My mother rushed to her side, arm around her shoulders, cooing comfort. My father glared at me. "Now look what you've done. She's already fragile and you're making it worse." "I always knew you resented me," my sister said between sobs. "I always knew. You think I don't notice how you look at me? Like I'm spoiled? I didn't ask to be born into this family. I didn't ask for their help. It just happened." "You're right," I said. "You didn't ask. You just took. For 26 years. And now you want to take the only thing I ever built for myself." Part 3. The Breaking. My mother tried a different angle then. She straightened her spine and looked at me with something approaching contempt. "Maybe if you were more generous, you'd have a family of your own by now. Maybe that's why you're still single, you don't know how to share." Mom said maybe I'm single because I don't know how to share. I've been sharing my future with a savings account because no one was going to take care of me. That's not selfishness. That's survival. She wouldn't know the difference. The hit landed. I felt it in my chest. I've been focused on building security, yes. Dating hasn't been a priority. But that's not selfishness, that's learning from watching my parents' financial stress tear at their marriage for years. I swore I'd never be in that position. And now my own mother was using my work ethic as evidence of a character flaw. My father delivered the final blow. The big weapon. The one they'd been saving. You know, when I'm gone, everything we have goes to both of you equally. But maybe we should reconsider that. If you won't help family when they need you, why should family help you later? I stared at him. Are you threatening to disinherit me if I don't give her my apartment? I'm saying actions have consequences. You're showing us who you are. We're taking notes. My mother nodded. My sister had stopped crying. She was watching now, calculating, waiting to see if the manipulation worked. Dad threatened to disinherit me if I didn't give her my apartment. The apartment I bought with my own money. Disinherit me from what? Everything I have, I built alone. Their inheritance is just their final leverage. I don't need it. I never did. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, loud in the sudden silence. Let me tell you who I am, I said. I'm the kid who worked 30 hours a week in high school while she got tutoring I couldn't have. I'm the one who paid for college while she partied through hers on your dime. I'm the one who figured out life with nothing while she figured out nothing with everything. And now, after I finally build something real, you want me to hand it over because she's a girl and life is harder for her? Her life is only hard because she's never been asked to do anything hard. That's not my fault. And it's not my responsibility to fix. No one spoke. My mother's mouth was open. My father's face had gone red. I continued. You want to disinherit me? Fine. Do it. I built what I have with nothing from you. I'll keep building with nothing from you. But I want you to look at her, really look at her, in 10 years. When she's 36, never held a job, never contributed anything, still waiting for someone to save her. And ask yourself, did you help her, or did you cripple her? Because what you call protection, I call destruction. You're not raising a woman. You're growing a dependent. And I won't fund it with my apartment. I left. Walked out the door without looking back. Update 1. The silence. 3 months passed. I didn't call. They didn't call. A stalemate of pride, or maybe something deeper. Something that had been broken long before that dinner, but had finally been spoken aloud. I threw myself into work. Got a promotion, the kind that comes when you're willing to stay late because you have nothing else to go home to but your principles. My boss noticed the change in me, the way I'd stopped apologizing for having opinions, stopped deferring to people who didn't deserve deference. You seem different, she said. More confident. I didn't tell her why. I just nodded and got back to work. My sister posted things on social media. Vague, wounded statements about family who abandons you and people who don't understand real struggle. She quoted poems about betrayal. She posted photos from old family vacations with captions like, "When things were simpler," and "Missing the people who used to love me." The comment section filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew nothing about the real situation, friends who'd only ever heard her side of the story. I unfollowed her. Blocked her, actually. First real peace I'd felt in years. I started seeing a therapist around this time. Not because I thought I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the patterns I'd grown up in. You were parentified, she told me during our 3rd session. You were expected to be an adult before you were ready, while your sister was infantilized, kept dependent, kept small. Both are forms of harm. Just different ones. That reframed something for me. Made me see my sister not as an enemy but as a casualty. A different kind of victim of the same dysfunction. The difference was that I'd been forced to develop strength, while she'd been trained in helplessness. I didn't owe her my apartment. But I could acknowledge that she'd been shaped by forces beyond her control, just like I had. I lived my life. Work. Friends. My apartment that nobody was taking from me. I repainted the bedroom a soft gray blue that reminded me of early mornings. Bought a new couch, the first piece of furniture I'd ever chosen purely because I liked it, not because it was cheap or available. Started cooking actual meals instead of the frozen dinners I'd survived on during the saving years. I was building a home, not just a shelter. Then my aunt called. She's my mother's sister, but she's always been different. More honest. More willing to see things as they are rather than as she wishes they were. I heard what happened, she said. I want you to know I'm on your side. I've watched them baby her for 26 years. It's not fair what they asked you to do. I learned that my aunt had tried telling my parents for years that they were creating a monster. They never listened. She'd suggested therapy, family counseling, boundaries. They dismissed her as jealous and bitter because her own children had to work for what they had. She started telling people you stole your apartment from her, my aunt said. That it was supposed to be hers. She's rewriting history. She's telling people I stole my apartment from her. An apartment I bought 5 years before this conversation. In her mind, my things are her options. My work is her entitlement. My existence is her backup plan. That's what they created. That's who she is. I wasn't surprised. That's what happens when reality doesn't match entitlement. You change the story until it does. Update 2. The crisis. 6 months after the dinner. My phone rang at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was my mother, the first time since the fight. She was crying. The sound hit me somewhere deep, somewhere I'd tried to wall off. Despite everything, she was still my mother. The woman who'd made me soup when I was sick, who'd taught me to tie my shoes, who'd smiled at my crayon drawings before the world divided us into the capable one and the precious one. Your sister got into financial trouble. Credit card debt. I don't know how it happened. She doesn't even have a job, but she owes $23,000. The creditors keep calling. They have our number because she gave it to them. $23,000. I couldn't fathom how someone with no income could accumulate that much debt. Then I thought about all those Instagram photos, the brunches, the boutique clothing, the trips with friends. She'd been living a lifestyle funded entirely by plastic promises, building a house of cards on foundation of nothing. We can't afford this, my mother continued, her voice breaking. We don't have that kind of money. Your father's retirement fund is already stretched. The house needs repairs. But if you sold your apartment... I hung up. I actually hung up on my mother. First time in my life. I sat in my apartment, and stared at the phone for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not from fear or anger, but from something more complex. The realization that there was no bottom to this well. That they would keep asking, keep expecting, keep extracting from me until there was nothing left to take. She called back. I didn't answer. They paid $23,000 in credit card debt she accumulated with no income. And they wanted me to sell my apartment to cover it. Her irresponsibility would cost me my life's work. That's not family. That's a parasite with a seat at the dinner table. I sent a text message instead. Took me an hour to write it, delete it, write it again. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to list every injustice, every double standard, every moment they'd chosen her over me. But I knew that wouldn't help. They'd never hear it. They'd just hear selfish and ungrateful and whatever else they needed to hear to maintain their version of events. I'm not selling my apartment to pay for her debt. I'm not giving her my apartment. I'm not funding her choices. If you bring this up again, I won't respond. I love you, but I won't be her ATM or her safety net. That's the boundary. Respect it or don't contact me. My mother didn't respond. My father didn't respond. My sister did. A furious message that called me every name imaginable. Selfish. Heartless. Jealous. Pathetic. A failure of a brother. A failure of a man. She said she hoped I died alone in my apartment, surrounded by the money I loved more than my own family. She said I'd always been cold, always been distant, that it was no wonder I couldn't keep a relationship, no wonder our parents had never been proud of me. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. Each word a small knife, finding the places I'd thought I'd armored. Then I blocked her. Not because I was strong. Because I had to be. Update 3. The fallout. Through my aunt, I learned the aftermath. My parents took out a loan to pay my sister's debt. Against their house, which they'd nearly paid off. $23,000, plus interest, plus years of payments they couldn't really afford. All to save their princess from the consequences of her own choices. My sister didn't change. If anything, the rescue taught her exactly what she'd always believed, that if she got in trouble, someone would fix it. The lesson she'd learned her entire life, reinforced once again. Why would she learn anything different? My parents reached out a few times over the following months. Awkward phone calls. Stilted conversations about the weather, about distant relatives, about anything except what had happened. They never apologized. They probably never will. But they stopped asking for my apartment. That's something. I think they finally understood. Not that they were wrong, because I don't believe they'll ever admit that, but that I was serious. That the river of my tolerance had run dry, and they could either accept its new banks or drown trying to push past them. Update 4. The new provider. A year has passed since that dinner. My sister has a new boyfriend now. He's wealthy, family money, trust fund, the kind of financial cushion that means never having to work unless you want to. Through Instagram, which I check occasionally through a friend's account like picking at a scab, I've seen photos of them in Santorini, in Paris, at restaurants where a single meal costs more than I spend on groceries in a month. She found another provider. Another safety net. Another person to fund the lifestyle she believes she deserves. The new boyfriend is wealthy. She found another provider. She'll never learn. Never have to. Someone will always save her, until they won't. And when that day comes, they'll call me again. And I'll say no again. Because I'm not her safety net. I'm not her backup plan. I'm the brother who figured it out. And I'm done sharing what I figured out with someone who refuses to learn. My parents are relieved, I think. Their problem is now someone else's problem. They can pretend everything is fine, that their daughter is happy and successful and loved, that their son is simply difficult, but family is family and time heals all wounds. They don't call often. When they do, we keep things surface level. They ask about work. I ask about their health. Neither of us mentions my sister. Neither of us acknowledges the crater she left in the middle of our family. Resolution: the morning after. Saturday morning. I'm sitting on my balcony, in my apartment, with coffee in my hand and the city quiet below. The sun is just coming up, painting the buildings gold and pink. I bought this view with a decade of my life, and I'm only now learning to truly see it. My phone buzzes. It's my aunt. We talk weekly now. She's become more family than my parents ever were, which is a strange thing to realize at 33. We discuss work, books, her garden. She tells me about my parents in small doses, enough to keep me informed but not enough to reopen wounds. Your parents ask about you, she says today. They miss you. But they still think you were wrong. Do you think I was wrong? She laughs, a warm, knowing sound. I think you were the only one who told the truth. That's not wrong. That's rare. After the call, I sit in silence. Think about the family I was born into versus the life I built. They don't match. Never did. I used to mourn that. Spent years grieving a family that existed only in my imagination. Parents who saw me, who valued me, who protected me the way they protected her. I mourned the brother-sister relationship that could have been, the closeness we might have shared if we'd been raised on the same planet. I don't mourn anymore. I just accept it. People ask if I feel guilty. For not giving my sister my apartment. For hanging up on my mother. For walking away from a family that saw me as a resource to be extracted. I don't feel guilty. I feel clear. For the first time in 33 years, I'm not performing for their approval. I'm not waiting for them to see my worth. I'm not hoping they'll treat me like they treat her. I'm just living. In my apartment. That I earned. That nobody gave me. That nobody's taking. She'll always have someone to catch her, until she doesn't. And when she falls for real, when there's no wealthy boyfriend or desperate parents or guilt-vulnerable brother to break her landing, maybe she'll finally learn what I learned at 16. Nobody's coming to save you. You save yourself. Or you stay lost forever. I chose to save myself. She chose to stay lost. Those were our choices. And I'm done paying for hers.